First of all, greetings from down under, wherever you may be watching this, and thank you to the Hong Kong Council of Social Service for their kind invitation to participate in this wonderful event. Hopefully, I'll get the chance to meet many of you in person at the Expo in Hong Kong in November, but if not, I hope you can feel free to reach out via email or LinkedIn. So I've been asked to speak about digital transformation and innovation in aged care. Let's start with some definitions. Again, the difference between invention, innovation, and transformation is something we really need to think about as we go through this journey. So invention basically means building something from scratch, providing something new, be it a process or a technology, whereas innovation actually requires us to use that invention to deliver a difference in service. And I think that's one of the important distinctions between invention and innovation. Innovation requires us to actually do something with the idea that we have. But then we go forward to transformation, and transformation is a great big new step. It basically requires us to take those innovative concepts and implement them in such a way that they can become sustainable and part of our long-term model of care. And this is really where the major challenge lies in aged care, in that we've had lots of inventions, we've had some great innovations over time, but implementing them as a sustainable long-term experience has been a challenge. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, we'll have a better understand how that's working. So let's look at what's some examples of what the difference between innovation, invention, and digital transformation looks like. And if you look at this slide, you can see that there is an intersection beyond that, between those. But the key is that at the end of the solution, we need to have an outcome. And that outcome is the key issue here as far as delivering on the promise of digital technology in aged care. We'll go into detail about this in future slides. So what do we actually want the technology to do for us? I think this is one of the key questions we need to ask. Whilst we can often become very enamored with the technology we're using, in reality, we really need to think about what it is we want it to do. And we need to align that with the goals of aged care itself. So the ability to deliver person-centered care is important. You have to do that efficiently because we all have very restrained resources in this space, and we have to be able to do it with our existing workforce, because the capability of building up a larger workforce is, again, a major challenge. It's also very important that we ensure that our solutions are interoperable and can share data across all aspects of care, because whilst aged care is an important part of a person's life, the actual care modalities available to them differ depending on where we are. Gerund technology fits very much into these three groups, and we've seen a number of inventions in this space. We've seen some great innovations implemented by organizations who take these inventions and implement them. And now we have to work on how we can use that Gerund technology as part of our broader digital transformation journey. I've given here a number of examples of how Gerund technology is currently used in aged care. These tend to be very focused on Australia because that's where I'm based, but as you look at the global landscape in aged care, many of these technologies are being used around the world. The key now with these technologies is to embed them into the care model in such a way that they're sustainable and also provide the value that we're looking for. We will do that and explore that in more detail soon. So let's look at the global landscape. If we look at the current state of digital transformation in our sector, we see many islands of innovation struggling to deliver on their promise. It's not the fault of the technology. Our technology colleagues have gone above and beyond in developing cutting-edge technologies that deliver technically what we need of them. Some are more advanced than others. Record-keeping systems have advanced significantly over the last couple of decades, yet even they do not deliver on the promise of transformation. They have improved efficiency, they've improved our billing capability, even to some degree improved our collaboration. But they haven't actually transformed the way we deliver care, nor delivered the big bump in productivity and effectiveness we need to provide the care required. However, they have provided us a solid framework to build on, so we shouldn't dismiss their development over the years. Telehealth and remote monitoring have advanced a lot over the past 5 years, but let's be honest, if it hadn't been for the pandemic in 2020, I don't think we would have seen the progress we have. The technologies have been in development for decades with very limited take-up, a solution waiting for a major problem to solve to be able to prove their worth. Now they are an accepted tool thanks to their success during COVID. AI, artificial intelligence, and data analytics is the big promise at present. It's hard to pick up any journal in our industry and not find a bunch of articles around AI. I think it will be a game changer, but still needs to get up the curve from invention to innovation, which will require providers and participants to start proving its worth. Assistive technologies have been around in an analog fashion for decades, but digital assistive technologies, often portrayed as robots but include much more than that, are also on the rise. However, they too need to prove themselves in the real world, which requires innovative providers to play the role. In Australia, we have been on this journey for a while now, triggered by the industry's response to the Royal Commission in the early 2020s, which highlighted many of the shortcomings. We have a new Aged Care Act about to come into effect on November the 1st, 2025, and there has been much work leading up to it. And in that regards, I have to commend the Australian government, and in particular, the current Chief Digital Information Officer, Faith Lavaris, who has led the digital transformation group within the department to get the ball rolling. However, as they say, the proof is in the pudding. So we await November 1 to see how well the digital innovations introduced by them and their various partners gel into a transformative solution. Hopefully I can come back next year and update you on that. Around the world, many countries face the same demographic challenge we face in Australia and as you do in Hong Kong, and are working on solutions. If you look at the various Northern European countries that are working in this space, Denmark, Sweden, they have an overarching strategy which includes both health and aging, which is a key to achieving success in this space. Understanding that as we follow an individual through their aging process, there are many parts of the government sector and the private sector that interact with them. So the ability to coordinate that, have a coordinated strategy across that life journey is critical. In Australia, we now have a digital health strategy and a digital aging strategy produced by the same department, and which have tied those two together. But building on this strategy is the key part of this, is to implement the solutions that are available. And often we have to implement them concurrently because many of them are reliant on each other for success. The other key issue here is collaboration. Collaboration across the entire team that delivers the services, including public and private organisations, governments, and individuals themselves who are receiving care. Delivering care to an aging population is a journey that requires a lot of people. We talk about the old days, we used to talk about a village to raise a child, but the reality is in aged care, we now need a village or a community to provide the care that's required to enable them to live the best life possible under the current circumstances. So in my view, one of the most important factors leading to success in any digital transformation, and in particular in the aged care and healthcare sector, is the digital maturity of both the sector itself, of those who deliver the care, and of those who receive it. I often describe this as the secret sauce for success of any venture in this space. Without it, many projects, if not all projects, fail, as they cannot deliver on their promise due to human factors that prevent them from succeeding. However, in a digitally mature organization, many of these human factors melt away as the organization adapts as required to deliver. So what do I mean by digital maturity? Well, the official definition is the capability and attitude of an organization to use digital technologies to support development. Personally, I believe the attitude component is the most critical part of this discussion. If they can get that right, the capability will develop. However, you need that attitude to be pervasive, from the board and senior executives all the way down to the people on the ground level delivering care and managing logistics. It is as much a soft skill of being able to adapt to new technologies and think about how they can best be used, as it is having people with the right technical skills to take full advantage of advanced technologies. We did a survey in Australia recently of the aged care providers' digital maturity, and it showed a wide range of results. Most were in the process of developing a structured approach to digital adoption, but were often hampered by lack of resources or the right people. The reason for this is simple. The digital maturity secret sauce does not apply only to aged care, but applies to every industry. And we do face a challenge of trying to get the right people into our industry to deliver on it. If you look at the slide, we've got a number of facets of what can be defined as part of digital security and a range of maturity levels. And the key here is be able to go up that maturity level. Everybody starts off with very limited digital capability. They have to build on that, putting in some basic building blocks for their digital maturity. That includes the capacity to use cloud computing, the capacity to manage cybersecurity, the capacity to provide tools that are suitable for the purpose. And then they need to start building on that to develop internal solutions, often based on external acquisitions of technology in such a way that they continue to add value to their service. It's a journey. I've been involved in a number of projects over the years in particularly the healthcare sector, but now more recently the aged care sector. And this never happens overnight. It happens over a prolonged period of time. So it requires patience on behalf of both the funders of the organization and those providing the care. But the outcomes make it all worthwhile. It's also key to make sure we have the right IT capability, we have the right peoples, we have a good governance structure that understands how the technology will be operated. We need to make sure we use industry-based standards so they have interoperability, so that as we add new technologies to our stack, they can integrate seamlessly into our solution. The ability to analyze data and understand what that data means at both a personal level and an organizational level is critical. Cybersecurity, unfortunately, nowadays is a given. We need to invest in that space, despite the fact that we hope that we never get attacked. The reality is the current cybersecurity environment is quite hostile. And then we really need to think about what this means at the individual care level that we're providing. What does the technology do for the person in our residential care facility, for the person in their homes, or for the person in the community? If we look at other industries, many have already learned the lesson. Retail, banking, and acute healthcare are significantly ahead of aged care in their digital maturity. As I said, I was involved in many hospital projects over the years, and they went through a painful but essential transition. It's not easy, but it is possible with the right mindset, enough time for it to become entrenched in your workforce, and the right set of skills to get you through the bottlenecks. Each industry has its specific set of tools to implement, and realistically, they will all make mistakes along the way. However, when developed, it provides a major boost to the digital transformation of the industry. So as I've shown again in this slide, there's some examples of how this relates to our industry. The key being here that we need to develop this progressively going forward and invest in the time and energies involved in making sure our staff are up to speed with the technologies and have the capacity to use them in a meaningful way. So what does digital maturity look like in aged care? Well, here are some examples. Moving from paper to electronics is a given. If you're still using paper forms to manage your residents in your residential aged care facilities or your home care clients, then you really have a journey ahead of you, because the move from paper to digital is an important first step. We need to be able to make sure we can capture documentation in real time. We need to be able to communicate across our teams, be they across the city or across the country. In Australia, for example, where many of our providers provide care across a country that's some 5,000 kilometres wide, the need to be able to provide digital communications is critical. And one of the key things here, of course, is having an understanding of the communication needs of your workers. What data do they need to share? How can they share that data whilst maintaining privacy and security? Because we've seen many times where the lack of security issues have caused privacy concerns that have really caused major issues to many organizations. So moving off paper to technology is great. If you haven't done it yet, you have a bit of an advantage over some of the older players, because we are now moving to a new paradigm of how technology is delivered. We're moving to cloud. Cloud technology has jumped leaps and bounds ahead of the on-premise technology, which was the mainstay of digital technology just some 5 or 6 years ago. So acquiring systems that are cloud-enabled is critical now. So if you are looking to make that first step, cloud technology is where you need to look. Make sure you have that discussion with your technology providers around how they would use the cloud to deliver on their promise. Once we've gone and started that digital journey, we need to start thinking about how we may turn it into an integrated care system. There are many components in delivering care: medications, observations, managing shopping for people who have limited mobility, providing them with the right aids, getting the right people into people's homes at the right time requires us to have an integrated care system which has a number of basic capabilities. The ability to have care management plans that are shared across everyone who requires them to deliver care. Some basic telehealth capabilities. When we can't get there in person, even if they are in the same town or city, sometimes it's just easier and better to actually have a short, sharp telehealth consult to enable people to understand what's happening. Basic medication management, integration between the doctor who prescribes, the pharmacist who dispenses, and the nurse or carer who helps deliver the medication enables us to ensure that the entire medication journey is done efficiently and safely, because we do have had in the past many challenges with safe delivery of medication. And being able to deliver training when and where it's needed. Again, in aged care, we have a very diverse workforce, which really only adds value when it's at the bedside, when we're dealing with the people who require care. So being able to provide the right care at the right time is critical, but the training to do that is essential, and being able to provide that training when and where they need it at a time that's convenient for them is critical. We then move on to evolve beyond that integrated care system, and we've seen many organizations around the world have started to implement these integrated systems into a smart care system. So what do we mean by a smart care system? Well, we now start doing things that take us a step forward. We have AI-powered care planning so that the care plans can be modified as required, but depending on the observations of the day. So if a particular client requires more care due to their congestive heart failure or their respiratory disease, or the mere fact that their normal family carers are no longer available, an AI-powered care plan system can actually update the system in real time, inform the relevant people about what that updated care plan is, and enable us to deliver the optimum care at the right time. Using sensor technology, we've seen a large rise of sensor technology over the years. Those Internet of Things type sensors can monitor people's movement, can monitor people's use of appliances in their household, can monitor their mobility. There's a number of things we can use, and these range from technologies that are camera-like devices all the way down to just using a standard Wi-Fi router to enable us to determine movement within a house. The range of technologies available nowadays has become quite amazing. Predictive analytics. Rather than wait for something to happen and respond to it, we can actually use the data about people captured through these IoT sensors and analyzed through efficient and effective AI tools to predict when people are at higher risk and respond to that risk before it happens. So rather than respond to a fall, how do we prevent that fall? Rather than respond to a medication miscommunication, let's ensure that that system is in place so we know who's at highest risk of medication management issues. All these things will make a huge difference to the delivery of care. Again, as this moves forward, it requires interoperability, and this is really where we need to insist that all the technologies we use have work with existing standards. Standards in aged care are still evolving, and we have a lot of work to be done here. But the key thing here is to ensure that we recognize what standards are being implemented by our systems and ensure that all our systems comply to the same standards so we can integrate them more effectively. A couple of examples here of how these technologies work. We've got records, we've got telehealth platforms, we've got medication management, we've got AI, and AI will become a bigger and larger part of what we talk about in the future. But the important thing here is to develop your own roadmap on how you implement these multiple steps. It has to start with the first step, and that's the key to understand what your current organization looks like. And there are a number of digital maturity schemas out there to enable you to evaluate that. and actually think about how you progress, to what level you're ready to progress to, what resources you have available, and what resources you need to bring into play. Realistically, there are challenges. Digital maturity requires a degree of digital literacy, which is often not inherent in our sector. We don't hire aged care workers for their digital skills, we hire them for their care skills. However, it's becoming more and more important for them to have skills around how they use technology. So training around digital literacy is important. And often that means just exposing them to the technologies and working with them or co-designing solutions that are suitable for their requirements. Yeah, providing them opportunities to improve their skills of success is important, but also providing them access to the relevant technologies. I've seen many a times where great ideas have been implemented, but failures in the technology space, the wrong device, the wrong size device, devices that aren't suitable for people working in home environments, lack of connectivity. So these sort of things are really important. We need to understand what the right technology is. And this is where it's really important to attend events like the Geron Technology Expo, where you get to see a range of different technologies in place and get a chance to actually try them out and see what works for your organization. Many of us will have legacy systems already in place, be they paper ledgers, which is a challenge to do, but often we've purchased electronic systems in the past decade or so, which are no longer fit for purpose. And having to manage these legacy systems is a challenge. We can get around that. There are solutions in place to enable legacy systems to integrate with modern systems, but it may be an opportunity to rethink about what your legacy systems are, whether they need to be replaced, and whether we need to implement a different system to manage that functionality. Funding is always a challenge. It is hard to get funding for these projects because they are capital costs, which sometimes doesn't show a fast and efficient return on investment. So therefore, understanding what the challenges are in your own organization, working with your board and senior executives to release the available funding, but also work with partners, including other care providers, to find economies of scale and how you can deliver this. Not all these technologies need to be expensive. There are a number of open source technologies now available that which will provide us with the tools to deliver on much of this promise. And finally, getting your workforce to accept that the technology is an enabler for them and a new way for them to deliver services. That's really important because there is a resistance from a workforce which has been doing things the same way for many years to resist change. But by using technology, they become both more efficient and effective, but it also improves the safety for themselves in the workforce. So what are the potential solutions? Well, you can get around this with some targeted training programs. It's important that you actually have training programs that are relevant to your organization, and working with partners to do that is critical. Making sure you have a standardized interoperability framework. It's a big words there, but words like FHIR and Inter-RAI come to mind as public standards that are available in aged care, which enables closer collaboration between organizations. Working on public-private partnerships. Whilst often in many of our countries, the government is the primary payer of these services, the delivery of the services is done through private organizations. So we need to make sure those two are working together. And finally, ensuring you have a good change management strategy. This is, like I said, is a journey. So you require dedicated resources to manage the change. That often means training, that means education, that means keeping people informed about what's happening and understanding what the risks are going forward. So what are my recommendations to you? First thing you do is, if you need some key items to take to your board, feel free to borrow this. What you really need to do is prioritize your digital literacy. Make sure that your organization has the technology skills internally to meet the demands of these new technologies coming forward. You have to invest in an interoperable infrastructure. Make sure you're using standards. And again, keep in mind the FHIR standard, FHIR, and the Inter-RAI standards, as well as the various HL7 standards for data transmission. But also work with your home organizations. Here in Australia, we're doing a lot of work with the Digital Health CRC to develop standards for the delivery of information in aged care. Foster an innovation culture. Good ideas will come from your workforce. they understand what the challenges are at the coalface. So making sure they're involved in innovation, be that through regular innovation workshops with your workforce, the ability for them to talk to other people within the organization, to bring people from other organizations into your organization to have discussions is critical, because without an innovation culture, you will just tend to digitize what you already do rather than develop transformative ways of delivering care with new solutions. And then make sure your policies are in place and make sure your policies take all these things into account. Policies have become the backbone of many of what organizations do. So it's important to have that. Then we need to think about how we implement it. And the implementation plan is critical. You can't just say, let's start doing this from day one. You need to have a plan which starts off with assessing your current situation, developing a plan, testing it internally, scaling it out, and continue to improve on it going forward. Because again, this is a lifelong journey which will significantly improve the quality of care. The other key, of course, is to measure what we're doing, demonstrate value to our organization and to the participants in our care system by demonstrating that we've actually improved the quality of life, improved our operational efficiencies, improved workforce satisfaction, and achieved interoperability across the sector. In the future, there's lots of lots of things coming along. And again, I'm sure you'll see lots of these being demonstrated at the Expo. But as we go forward, AI will become a major player in this space. We need to keep our eyes around that. Smart home and ambient sensing are going to become really important. Advanced robotics, we've seen some great examples of robots used for specific purposes in aged care. We now need to start thinking about how we can use those robots and those technologies more effectively. And we've seen a lot of use of virtual and augmented reality. These are things that will evolve as your digital strategy improves and as your digital literacy improves. But keep an eye out for innovations in that space. Attend the various conferences, keep up with the publications, and you'll find there's lots of opportunities ahead. So in conclusion, my message to you is pretty simple. Digital transformation is essential. You can't deliver the quality and safe care required by the growing needs of our population without a digital framework around it. So digital transformation is what's going to get you there. In Australia, we've taken a fairly proactive step, and hopefully by next year, I'll be able to come back and report on success, but it has required both government intervention and private intervention. There's multiple faceted approach to success here. You need to work with multiple partners, and we'll start from your executive team all the way down to your on-the-ground deliverers of care to deliver service. And you need to continue to learn. So the opportunity to learn, I'm looking forward to the Hong Kong Expo to see what the experiences are in Hong Kong. Here in Australia, in May next year, we will have the ITAC conference, and everyone will be welcome to do that. We need to collaborate globally because the challenges we face are the same. It is human beings we are treating, and we need to understand how we can provide them to the highest quality care possible. The key, of course, is to start now. This is not something you can push down the track. You need to think about this from day one and develop a strategy and a plan for delivering this forward. If you do so by embracing digital innovation today, you can refine to build a more resilient, responsive, and high quality aged care system for tomorrow for those who need it. That's my email. I'm open for any discussion. If anyone wants to send me an email, ask me any questions, have a chat. I hopefully will be in Hong Kong in November for the Expo and look forward to meeting many of you in person. But in the meantime, feel free to reach out either through my email or through LinkedIn, and let's have a vibrant discussion around how Gerund technology will evolve to enable us to deliver the high quality care that our older citizens deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, George, for the in-depth sharing. Let's see if we have any questions from our online audience. Hello, George.
Hi. Well, welcome from Australia.
Well, thank you. Let's have a look at the questions from our online audience. So our online audience agree that AI is the game changer. For the aged care home managers, do you think what roles we can take part so that the aged care sector would not be left behind?
Well, that's a great question. And the reality is that for AI to be successful in our sector, it really is the people delivering care who need to be actively engaged. I think the first step is some basic education, understand what the various types of AI that exist are, I mean, whilst we've focused very much on generative AI over the last couple of years after the launch of ChatGPT, there are many different aspects of AI. So there are some very good basic AI courses available online. I recommend people have a look at those. But then also just start playing around using AI. Get the ChatGPT tool on your phone or the equivalent. Have a look at what it can do, and then start to think about what are the problems that I face every day in the delivery of care, and how can I use some added help in solving those problems. The AI does not solve the problem for you. It helps you solve the problem. So think about it as a smart colleague next to you who can give you a hand with thinking through problems. From an organization perspective, you do need to have some policies and strategies around AI. Make sure privacy and security are core to what you do. And think about what are the AI tools you introduce into your organization. At the moment, there are hundreds of AI tools there. Speak to your other providers and see which ones are most suitable for your organization, and then just try it. I mean, I think we really need to experiment and almost drive a culture of AI innovation in our sector. And I think events like the Geron Technology Summit and Expo are a great opportunity for those sort of discussions to take place.
Amazing. So you have mentioned about learning and also trying to put that, also playing around with AI will be a good start for our workers to get familiar with the setting now. And we have a question from our audience: how to integrate the sectoral interest in the digital transformation? Sometimes the technology upgrades are about the budget available of the individual agency. How to deal with that? How to deal with that?
Budgets are a perennial problem in our sector because there are many things we can spend money on, and we only have limited resources. So first of all, I think is having an understanding about the cadence or the speed on which we do our upgrades. And sometimes we may need to think about slowing down those upgrades to meet both our budget requirements, but also our workforce burnout requirements. Here in Australia, we've had some significant challenges recently because we've got quite a rapid pace of change, and often you'll find the workforce just doesn't have the capability to deliver on that speed. But understanding the budgets is important. Early discussions with your vendors about associated costs, having a good understanding of those costs, but also tying your vendors to those costs. So making them deliver value, not just expenses to your organization. But it is a hard discussion. I mean, your finance people need to be involved, your operations people need to be involved, but you need to have a good relationship with the software and hardware vendors that you're working with, and make it into a partnership rather than an antagonistic relationship.
Thank you. That's a very good and very wise answer to that. So I think that would be very helpful to our workers. The other questions from our audience is: do you think what are the success factors for different care organizations to go for digital transformation?
Well, yeah, digital transformation is a big word, and it means different things to different people. But the reality is, it's all about making your organization more successful by using digital tools as part of the journey. And I think the key thing there, and I highlighted it in the presentation, is that your workforce and the people in your organization need to be ready for that transformation. So their digital literacy and their digital maturity are sort of the key factors that lead to that success. Where we've seen this happen in many organizations is that they spend a reasonable amount of time preparing for digital transformation. They don't just sort of start the digital transformation on the 1st of January, but they think about, what do we need to do to have in place here? That means having the people with the relevant skills, having a board who understands the process ahead of them and the risks associated with it, because digital transformations, when they work, are spectacular, but sometimes we hit roadblocks and we have to sort of back off a bit and change. So the right people, the right training, focus on digital maturity, and digital maturity is something that evolves over time. It doesn't just happen overnight. You can't just do a training program on Monday and by Wednesday have a digitally mature workforce. They need to, and as we discussed with AI, they need to work with the technology, see what it can do, understand its benefits and its shortcomings. And a lot of that just means providing them some time to do that in a safe way. So they may well have sandbox or demonstration type equipment in place, getting them to attend events like the expo where they get to see things happening but from various organizations is a good start. But the key is preparation. If you prepare for the transformation, then the chances of success of your transformation are much greater. It is that old saying, you know, when you cut down a tree, you need to spend time sharpening the axe. The same thing relates back to digital transformation journeys.
Thank you. That's a very good reminder to all of us. It could not be like taking place in just one night, but it takes very long time for preparation, and that will make successful cases. We have questions from audience on when doing the checking of the digital transformation journey, do you think self-check or engaging outside party would be necessary to facilitate the process?
Look, as long as your workforce has the skills to understand what the technology is doing, I think it's important to have a lot of those skills in-house. You will sometimes need to bring some external sources in to verify, whether it's a compliance requirement or an authorization requirement. Then sometimes you do need to bring in external people to check on the process. But as long as the people in the organization have enough skills and training in the technology, I think they should play the major role in that. And also, then you need also a culture of honesty. So if something is wrong, the people in the organization need to be willing to put their hands up and highlight the problems early, because often these problems can be solved quickly if you catch them early. It's often things like a minor software change or a configuration change of the hardware can solve many problems. But we need to be able to talk about those in an open, frank way without having to worry about being blamed for the problems. Again, this is a new journey for us all. There is no standard textbook on how to digitally transform health and social care. So we need to be part of the journey, have open discussions. When we were doing our large hospital a few years ago, we had a Monday morning meeting where we sat down and sort of said, okay, what worked last week? What didn't work last week? What can we do to fix those things that didn't work? Let's develop a plan for the next week about solving those problems and come back by Friday and see where they are. So constant communication within your internal organization is critical. But keep an eye out for some external organizations that can help, and that they're often the peak bodies. It could well be the council or other organizations that have a stake in the success of the operation as well.
Amazing, thank you. We have also questions on the systems in aged care are generally tied with lots of regulations and requirements from the authorities. So is there any experience that you can share with us? Is there any negotiation with the government along in the process?
Yes. Look, the government in Australia, the government pays for almost all of our aged care costs. So they're obviously an important stakeholder. From what I understand, in Hong Kong, it's very similar. We need to get them involved in the discussions early. Whether it's a negotiation, it is a bit hard to negotiate with the big player in the game, which is the government. But in my experience, when you have open discussions with the government, and we saw this in Australia, we've had a very significant digital transformation journey over the last 2 or 3 years, and I commented in my presentation. The Chief Digital Information Officer here, Faith Lavaris, has been very open. She has every 2 weeks, there's a public meeting of all the major stakeholders talking about the issues. And every 6 weeks, she does a large public webcast to literally hundreds, if not thousands of people in the sector talking about the progress. The government needs to develop a roadmap. The government needs to demonstrate that they have confidence in the delivery of their roadmap. And then they really need to continue to have discussion. It's hard to call it negotiation, but I think it's ongoing discussion, because success of the providers reflects on the government in a positive way. So they need to be an active participant. I think communication is the key here. Communication between the vendors providing the solution, the providers who do the care, the government who often pays for this and does the regulation, and making sure the regulations follow international trends. So we have a lot of standards around privacy standards and those sort of things, making sure we have common standards so that software developers can develop solutions that may not only suitable for Hong Kong, but they can work in a broader region as well.
Amazing. Thank you. You have reminded us that ongoing and robust communication with different parties, no matter it's an outsider or the government, that will be very crucial for the development of AI in our aged care setting. So we will now have a dialogue section. May I now invite Mr. Kenny Shui, Vice President of our Hong Kong Foundation and Executive Director of Public Policy Institute, to join George. George and Kenny, your time now.
Okay.
Hi, Kenny.
Hello, George. So thanks, George, for your amazing sharing. So I think all the audience, including me, also learned a lot. So let me start with a more general question. So actually, in your presentation, you mentioned that the digital maturity in the aged care sector is processing more slowly compared to other industries like banking and retail. So are there any lessons we can draw from these sectors to accelerate the digital transformation in aged care, or the aged care sectors will require more government incentive instead of the market behavior?
Yeah, look, there are a number of barriers that we face. We have those barriers in Australia. From the discussions I've had with people in Hong Kong, you have very similar barriers. And if you talk to any developed economy, they have the same barriers. The biggest barrier we face currently is that the current people we're providing these services to come from a very tough culture. They've been through a very hard time. They've had wars, they've had depressions, they've had many challenges. So they tend to be very, very tough and very stoic. So as a result, when we provide them solutions like gerund technology or even home care providers coming into their houses, they often see that as a bit of a sign of weakness, and they push back against the use of it. So we need to educate them that the technologies that we're introducing into their homes and into their environments is there to help them live more safely, more independently, and also to give peace of mind to their family. So a better understanding of what the goals we have with the technology are. We need to make sure the technology that we put into people's houses isn't ugly. It has to be non-obtrusive. These people have homes that they've lived in for decades. They're very proud people about their homes. So when we stick a camera in every corner of the room or a big ugly black box in the corner, they don't like that. So we need to think about the design of the equipment we put in. And then we also need to think about the models of care. How do we use this information in a way that makes a difference, and communicate that with them and with their family members so they can understand that there is actually a value in what we're doing. We're not just putting in technology because it's the latest thing to do. We're doing it to help them live safely, live longer at home, live a more independent life. So communication is critical. A little bit of digital literacy, give them a chance to play around with the tablet. We saw during COVID that many of them used tablets for the first time to communicate with their families. Introduce them to the tools in a friendly, safe way so they can understand that. That'll remove some of that resistance. And then from an organizational perspective, the resistance is often just making sure that there's budgets in place, there's workforce in place, and there's a contingency plan if things don't go as smoothly as they hope they would.
Okay, thanks, George. So I really enjoy your points that communication is the key, because when we talk about the drone technology, we always need to educate them to give them more confidence. So we also link up to our next question. So in your presentation, you talk different solutions, and I'm particularly interested in the target training programs as they address two key challenges you mentioned. One is the digital literacy and access. Another one is about the workforce resistance. So in Hong Kong, actually, the digital literacy remains a significant weakness, so especially within the aged care sectors. So could you share more insight on how we may design effective training program tailor-made to different types of resident care homes, public and the private sector one, and more importantly, how can we create sufficient incentive for care home and their staff to actively participate in these programs?
Okay. Look, training programs vary around the world, and in my experience, for a training program to be successful in technology, it has to be immersive and hands-on. So it can't be just a online training course. It needs to be a hands-on course where they actually get to utilize the technology, see it in reality, and it needs to be continuous. It can't just be we'll do this at the beginning of the year and every year come back to it. Continuous training. And that's why it's important when we look at our solutions, for those solutions to have inbuilt help and tutorial models built into them, so that people can jump into when they're using something, use a tutorial in real time to try and work out how to use it better. A lot of it relies on self-learning. The individuals who are going to use the technology need to want to learn the technology and spend some time with it. That may mean that we need to give them some time off during their shifts to spend time with the technology. But I think the key thing here is to make sure we expose them to the technology as early as possible and in a non-threatening way, not so, again, not roll up a Monday morning, hand them a device and say, you must use this, but get them a chance to play with these devices. Give them some mobile devices and let them do some low risk activities initially with them, their own journaling, their own capture of information for their own purposes, and try and make the training fun. But you have to include a compliance component. You need to be able to assess at the end of the training program that the goals that you need to seek are happening. So continuous exposure, demonstration of value, immersion, getting staff actively involved in it, and getting the vendors actively involved in making sure their tools have both training built into them, but also have interfaces that are easy to use. So I think one of the big challenges we've had in the past is that systems have been designed for desktop computers and then transferred onto mobile devices. We really need to think about the interfaces of the systems that we use and how those interfaces are designed for ease of use.
Yes, this is very important because if we can make the training more fun, then probably the staff is more enjoy to using it. And I think it is also important because during the training, the staff can also express their concern and even the ideas to further modify the drone technology so that the company can also get some feedback from the users. So my last question, so I want to ask a challenging one. So one of the solutions you mentioned is leveraging the public-private partnership, the PPP model, for a collaborative funding. In Hong Kong, a major barrier to drone technology development and adoption is its high cost issues. So in our previous years, our government has introduced some incentive to support the residential care home in renting or purchasing the drone technology product. And even now, we enhance our voucher scheme for community use. However, the government is now facing the physical deficits these years, so make it more difficult to offer more aggressive subsidy. And at the same time, the private sector is also under pressure due to the economic uncertainty these years. So given this constraint, do you have any advice on how we can sustain and strengthen our public-private partnership model in this?
Look, that does remain a challenge because, like we discussed, government predominantly pays for aged care, although we are seeing a shift in people paying more for their care out of pocket. And as we're getting people living longer and longer, there's a requirement for us to have financial models that meet those requirements. And again, it becomes very locality specific. In Australia, we have a large number of private providers who are essentially funded by the government to provide care. Now, they work on building internal efficiencies into their operations to improve their own internal return on investment. So they're often willing to experiment with new technology. However, as you highlighted, the capital cost of these technologies can be a challenge because they get paid on a fee-for-service model. So they actually don't get paid for the technology. They get paid for the service they deliver with the technology. So understanding the costs associated with the technology in the delivery of care and look for ways for that technology to either decrease the cost of care delivery, and that requires them to think about the process, how they can improve the process by using the technology, cut out some of the unneeded steps, make them get better use out of their workforce. One example we've seen in Australia is that by using telehealth type technology in people's homes, they've managed to significantly cut down the amount of travel required for some of their more senior staff. So the nurses don't necessarily have to go to the home. A care worker can be in the home, can bring in a nurse via a remote monitoring solution, and that nurse can then deliver the right care. Previously, that nurse would have had to jump in the car, drive to the person's home, spend an hour in traffic. Now that same nurse can do 4 or 5 visits in an hour using that technology. So thinking about how the models can be adapted. But I think it's also important to highlight the value of this in a broader range. So in Australia, we've been using a lot of local and national awards as a way of driving this innovation, get people to showcase their solutions in such a way that provides kudos for the organizations using it. But then it also provides benefit for the organizations who develop the technology. It becomes part of their marketing. They can use it to grow the number of customers they have. And, in the region that we're in, I mean, Hong Kong and in the South Pacific and Asia are huge opportunities for these organizations to take their solutions and commercialize them. So thinking about the potential for those solutions to be commercialized, I think that's an opportunity for both the private organizations to collaborate with governments to drive some of those examples. I know my colleagues from Australia, from Austrade, are working with you guys to demonstrate some of the value of our technologies here. And there's lots of technologies in Asia that will have value here. But we need to make sure we do this in an academically rigorous way. We can't just promote technology for the sake of technology. We need to demonstrate that it makes a difference. So it's really important that we use proper evaluation methodologies. But when we see the potential costs associated with a poorly managed aging population and compare that to the benefits of having a aging population which is managed well and safely and confidently in their own homes, we can see there's benefits back to society, and the government sort of can reap some of the benefits of that. But ultimately, it comes down to demonstrating value. And again, it goes back to the discussion we had earlier about this is a slow process. We can't do it overnight. It evolves over time, and as it evolves, we need to be able to adapt to it. And having government support is critical, but having private enterprise, both the providers of the solutions, but the people who use the solutions, the aged care, long-term care providers actively engaged, and measuring what's of value to them and demonstrating it in a public forum.
Okay, so we definitely should remind the potential value that it can bring for the private sector. So of course, it can bring the business opportunity. And for the public sector, even the government can save some healthcare costs in the long run. So let's pass our time to MC.
Thank you, George. We hope to see you in November to join our GIES in Hong Kong. The coming session will be conducted in Cantonese. Please switch language channel if appropriate. 而家係工作坊2本地評論環節，承接剛才 George 所提出嘅澳洲經驗，我哋再次邀請到水志偉先生為我哋分享。水先生係團結香港基金副總裁兼公共政策研究院執行總監，喺公共政策領域累積咗唔少經驗。研究範疇涵蓋經濟及科創發展、金融科技、綠色金融、生物科技、樂齡科技、藝術創新以及社會創新等多方面為香港發展出謀獻策。有請 Kenny 為我哋本地業界作出數碼轉型以及就未來共同發展方向作出回應。
好，咁咧而家呢個環節啦，咁就即係我轉台就講翻廣東話啦。咁嗱，其實啱啱咧我哋都好榮幸，即係聽到阿 George 好多嘅分享，咁就講緊話啊，其實即係澳洲或者其他地方嘅一啲情況咁樣啦。咁睇翻香港嘅位置咧，其實我哋都見到成個即係樂齡科技，或者我哋見到即係喺呢個科技個應用嘅位置，其實我哋都見到係有唔同嘅階段嘅。咁或者我都簡單講下啦。咁其實好似樂齡科技咁樣啦，咁喺大概10年之前咧，即係相對一個係比較新嘅概念啦。咁所以其實當時咧，我哋亦都同社聯啦合作出咗2個報告嘅。第一個報告咧就係一個即係整體嘅概況報告啦。咁其實咧都攞咗政府2個報告咧都有攞政府 SRE 分嘅 support。咁我哋睇緊就係話啊，其實嗰時候有啲咩樂齡科技產品，到底有啲咩 gap 導致佢即係出唔到街咧，或者啲人係好少會去用咧。咁之後咧，我哋都會針對住一啲嘅 gaps 咧，俾咗一啲嘅 solution。咁我哋咧就去到第2個階段嘅時候咧，其實我哋都見到咧，政府咧亦都即係好重視樂齡科技啦，同埋即係點樣可以幫到長者嘅位置。咁所以入面咧，我哋提到嘅一啲建議啦，例如話可能大家都會有聽過嗰個10億嘅樂齡同埋康復嘅創科應用基金啦。咁其實由一開始俾院舍，即係由政府資助嘅院舍，去到 expand 到俾話啊，其實私人嘅院舍都可以用，甚至而家咧，我哋見到，因為其實始終大部分嘅長者咧都係喺社區嗰度生活嘅。咁其實咧點樣係改善我哋嘅 voucher scheme 啦，令到佢哋有部分都可以用到個 voucher 去即係去租或者去買一啲嘅樂齡科技產品啦。咁其實我哋呢啲咧都見到政府咧喺過去嗰幾年嘅施政報告咧，其實都係有去 highlight 嘅。咁我哋而家咧，其實再睇嘅時候咧，我哋都會見到咧，其實政府除咗而家去講樂齡科技嘅時候咧，另一個重點咧就係去講 AI 嘅。咁亦都好多時候咧，都希望咧將 AI 咧應用喺唔同嘅層面啦。咁所以我哋嚟緊咧，其實會預計會見到更加多類似話 Drone Tech 再加 AI 嘅 application 點樣用喺 Drone Tech 嘅時候咧，咁可能係嚟緊嘅一個重點。咁或者喺呢個位置咧，我今日都簡單講兩部分啦。第一就係講下話其實而家政府喺 AI 嗰個嘅規劃嘅打算係點樣，我哋可以進一步去提升啦。咁第二咧，其實亦都會講下話，其實 AI 點樣應用喺呢個嘅樂齡科技有啲咩嘅國際同埋香港嘅一啲嘅例子咁樣啦。咁我哋先睇翻啦，好似 AI 咧，咁其實點解話係今年嘅其中一個即係施政報告嘅重點咧？我哋睇翻其實佢喺上一年咧，佢通常咧 AI 就 mention 咗14次左右啫。咁但係今年嘅時候咧，其實我哋見到佢就大幅提升啦，就已經大概 mention 咗接近80次咁滯啦。咁我哋去睇翻我哋香港個 AI 嘅 performance 係點樣咧？咁我哋咧可以參考一個我哋同之前UN 聯合國佢哋嗰邊一齊去做嘅一個研究報告啦。呢個研究報告咧有 measure 到百幾個經濟體佢哋嗰個 AI 嘅 performance 嘅。咁如果大家有興趣咧，都可以掃翻呢個 QR code 去睇翻個 report 嘅。咁我哋咧就簡單咁講一講下。咁其實我哋去睇一個地方佢個 AI 個發展係點樣咧？其實我哋通常咧就從幾個維度去睇嘅。咁我哋可以先睇個 column 嘅位置啦，我哋會先睇個 infrastructure、data 同埋 skills 方面。咁而喺每一個嘅位置咧，我哋都會再分 development，即係個建設嘅階段啦，同埋講緊 adoption，即係個應用嘅階段嘅。咁而我哋咧亦都會見到政府嘅 policy 同埋 governance 嘅位置咧，就點樣去 support 唔同位置。咁簡單舉少個例子啦，好似 infrastructure 嘅 development 嘅階段咧，我哋而家成日都提到 Cyberport 嘅超算中心啦。咁其實呢一個咧，正正咧就係提升我哋 infrastructure 喺嗰個建設 AI 能力嗰方面嘅。咁例如好似 data 咁樣啦，咁我哋咧其實都見到香港咧，例如話我哋喺一啲公用嘅 data，好似例如話 HA 入面嘅 data 咧，其實佢係個 quality 係好高嘅。係啦，咁但係 private sector 位置咧，我哋就相對比較缺乏少少啦。咁但係喺個應用嘅層面嘅時候啦，咁大家有時都會講到話其實如果要用 HA 嘅 data，可能都會相對而家可以用嘅，但係就唔係話太容易。咁可能你要去到佢個 building 個位置啦，咁點樣去 facilitate 啲人去容易先去用啦？咁呢個就係 data adoption 嘅問題啦。咁而喺個 skill 嗰方面啦，咁其實我哋睇翻啦，我哋即係成日都講到話其實香港有好多好好嘅即係科技嘅人才啊，我哋大學排名好高。咁呢一個位置咧，其實就係講緊即係 AI 喺 skill 方面個 development 嘅位置啦。咁其中一個例子就係當然香港有5間即係百強嘅大學啦，喺我哋香港位置。咁而喺 policy 嘅位置啦，咁其實咧我哋而家亦都見到，其實我哋都出咗啲人工智能嘅道德嘅標準嘅指引啊，即係點樣去俾一啲嘅 guideline俾一啲公司等等。咁其實我哋睇翻啦，即係其實喺個環球啦，我哋有 mention 到呢個報告，其實我哋有睇到即係過百個嘅經濟體個 performance。咁基本上咧分為4格嘅。咁如果喺個 AI 嘅 development 同埋喺個 adoption 咧，都係一個領先嘅人咧，咁我哋就會叫做 leaders 啦。通常呢一部分咧就係講緊一啲develop 嘅 economies 嘅已發展嘅經濟體。咁如果係講緊話其實可能有啲地方佢 development 未必做咁多，但係佢個應用層面都高咧，咁我哋咧就會叫做實踐者嘅位置啦。咁調翻轉啦，如果係講緊咧喺嗰個嘅 development 嘅位置係高嘅，咁但係 adoption 用得相對係比較少咧，咁我哋就會叫 creator 嘅。咁通常咧喺實踐者嘅位置就係一啲 developing 嘅 economies，creator 咧就相對比較少嘅。咁不過舉個例啦，好似印度咁咧，其實佢就係屬於呢一種，即係其實佢哋咧有好多好好嘅人才去 set develop 嘅。咁但係喺佢哋個 country 方面咧，佢相對應用就比較少啲。咁而香港嘅位置我哋睇翻啦，喺 infrastructure 嘅位咧，我哋見到咧其實咧。我哋咧都係喺個領導者嘅位置，咁但係咧喺個 development 嘅位咧，其實咧我哋相對冇 adoption 做得咁好嘅，咁所以咧就我哋都會提到施政報告咧，其實點解要起多 data center 就係咁嘅原因啦。咁而第二個位置啦，喺個 data 嘅位啦，咁其實咧我哋睇翻嘅時候啦，咁都會見到咧就係講緊話其實咧我哋咧喺應用嘅位置咧，其實都做得 OK 嘅。咁但係我哋咧未必有咁即係唔似得可能內地啊或者美國咁樣咧，其實有咁多 data 係可以用嘅。咁點樣去提升咧？咁一陣都會睇一睇嘅。咁而第三個就係一個 AI skill 嘅位置啦。咁呢個亦都係啱啱 George 佢有提醒到嘅一個位置啦。你點樣令到有啲嘅 training course 啲人係識得去用啦？咁呢個亦都係香港需要學嘅一個 lesson 嚟嘅。因為我哋見到我哋而家其實即係啲人才方面係強嘅，咁但係喺個應用層面咧就相對係比較弱嘅。咁點樣去提升呢一樣嘢就係我哋一陣都會講嘅。咁所以其實簡單嚟講咧，其實香港咧係一個 leader 嘅位置。 咁而我哋個即係喺個施政報告入面啦，咁其實希望咧將我哋個位置再進一步去提升啦。咁而我哋睇一睇翻啦，咁好似啱啱所講到 infrastructure，咁其實除咗我哋啱啱所講到嘅即係 Cyberport 嘅超算中心啦，咁其實喺今次施政報告嘅72點咧，其實都有 mention 喺沙嶺嘅位置啦，咁其實佢都再會起多少 data centre 嘅。咁係因為咧，其實估算咧，其實我哋見到嚟緊2-3年啦，即係個算力嚟計咧，咁其實我哋大概需要3000啦，咁但係長遠咧，我哋係需要15,000嘅。咁而家嗰個嘅 Cyberport 嗰個超算中心嘅時候咧，其實佢而家係大概提供到1500嘅，咁但係喺嚟緊2-3年咧，其實佢都會提供到3000。咁但係咧，我哋就唔係可以淨係依靠呢個嘅超算中心嘅，咁所以我哋都需要一啲其他嘅 data centre 嘅。咁而第二點喺 data 位置咧，我哋啱啱亦都有提到就係點樣去增加個 data set 個位啦。咁呢一個咧，其中我哋而家探討緊就係話啊，其實點樣可以喺 cross border，因為內地其實有好多數據嘅，咁點樣係可以應用到內地嘅數據咧？咁呢個對於成個樂齡科技啊，或者係養老嘅發展啊，其實都好重要嘅。咁而第三點啦，亦都係即係啱啱 George 都有提到啦。咁其實 AI literacy 同埋個 skills 嗰方面咧，其實分兩部分嘅。一部分就當然係個在職嘅人士啦，另一部分就係講 general，即係對所有嘅學生嘅位置。咁兩個部分咧，其實都有提到嘅。例如好似今年嘅施政報告第147段啦，咁其實佢都有講過話啊，嚟緊要做多少 AI education 嘅。咁如果喺一啲嘅workers 方面啦，咁其實咧香港咧係有一個叫做即係僱員再培訓局啦。咁其實佢可以幫僱員咧去做一啲嘅升級啦，即係去學一啲必須嘅 skills 嘅。咁我哋呢一個咧，其實我哋以前都有出報告就講過話啊，其實點樣係幫佢哋即係掌握需要而家應用嘅一啲 skills 咧。咁我哋而家都幫佢做緊一個 review 嘅。咁亦都係今年施政報告啦，亦都會講咧，其實嚟緊咧佢會轉多少少一個技能為本嘅性質嘅。咁我哋最後啦，就講一講翻話，好似 AI 點樣應用喺一個樂齡科技嘅情況咁樣啦。咁我哋先睇一睇國際嘅sample。國際 sample 嘅時候咧，其實我哋見到啦，即係有啲偏遠嘅地方，咁其實咧佢哋可能都有啲肺結核病嘅情況嘅。咁其實咧佢哋要去到即係醫院嗰方面咧去檢查咧，其實唔係咁容易嘅。咁所以好多時候咧，其實佢哋咧會有一啲嘅machine 設計咗出嚟，好似呢個手持一個 X-ray 嘅 machine 咁樣啦。咁其實佢就可以去到嗰啲嘅村莊啊，然之後咧就例如話喺南蘇丹啊，或者係塔吉斯坦嗰邊咧，咁其實幫佢哋睇下佢哋個肺部嘅情況嘅。咁當然我哋香港就有啲唔同啦，因為其實我哋香港始終即係個醫院都會比較係近嘅位置。咁但係始終長者咧，其實都唔會話即係想成日去醫院即係去做一啲檢查嘅位嘅。咁所以其實呢啲時候咧，我哋都可以應用到 AI 同埋一啲樂齡科技嘅位置。咁舉下面嗰兩個例子啦，咁例如話好似長者去睇嘅時候，咁當然可能最基本咁，其實如果我哋有呢一個嘅 machine 嘅時候咧，咁可以睇到佢哋個牙齒嘅狀況係點樣啦。如果我哋覺得佢哋係需要嘅時候，咁先至可能叫佢哋話啊去睇一睇牙醫個位置。咁另一方面啦，咁其實咧我哋知道長者其實個即係慢性疾病其實都係一個好重要嘅，即係會去檢查嘅位啦。咁例如話睇佢有冇糖尿病嘅時候，咁其實咧我哋而家都見到啲樂齡科技嘅產品嘅時候咧，其實好多時候個長者覺得話啊，如果你帶過去幫佢去驗，咁其實又要拮佢手指，咁其實會唔會唔衞生啊，或者各方面？咁但係其實我哋都見到而家有啲非侵入式嘅一啲檢查嘅，咁其實就唔需要話係即係用到血液嘅，咁可能用到唾液啊，或者係一啲嘅汗液啊等等咧，咁其實已經係可以做得到噶啦。咁但係當然啦，咁其實佢背後都有 AI 成分嘅，因為佢即刻有個數字嘅時候，其實佢都要分析到其實你嗰個嘅 situation 係有冇需要去即係睇醫生啦，定係點樣嘅。咁而另一個例子啦，咁其實咧我哋都可以睇翻啦。咁其實好似左上角呢一個啦，咁其實有提到咧，即係印度咁其實咧就有一啲嘅即係懷孕婦女啦，咁其實佢需要唔同嘅 support。咁但係咧始終佢哋我哋見到嘅時候，佢哋都有唔少人可能有時會 drop out 咗嘅。咁我哋就可以用 AI 去分析，就係話啊，其實邊一啲咧係一啲比較即係相對高風險嘅人士，咁其實佢哋係更加需要接受 advice，或者如果佢哋係即係我哋見到個 potential drop out 嘅時候，我哋點樣去 remind 翻佢咧咁樣。咁而右上個例子就亦都可能我哋即係之前早幾年啦，咁我哋睇翻即係可能疫情嘅時候，咁可能例如話喺巴西嘅時候，咁之前委內瑞拉有啲難民，咁其實入去嘅時候啦，咁其實佢點樣去即係 control 嗰個嘅疫情嘅風險啊，或者點樣去加大一啲嘅資源啊等等。咁呢一方面咧，其實喺香港咧都可以參照得到嘅，因為我哋睇翻就算疫情期間嘅時候啦，其實我哋都用咗好多啲 AI 嘅 solution 啦，咁我哋睇翻話啊，其實邊一個地區 其實佢嗰個嘅風險會比較相對高啲咧，咁我哋可以及早去預備一下。甚至咧，其實我哋去睇翻就係話啊，如果對於某啲長者嚟講嘅時候咧，咁其實我哋覺得如果將來係有一啲嘅傳染病啊或者各方面嘅時候咧，咁其實對邊一啲嘅長者或者係病人會機會去影響大小，會去及早去通知佢哋啦。又或者我哋見到好似而家 PolyU 呢個 model 咁樣，其實佢都係去研究翻話啊，其實如果將來有唔同嘅傳染病嘅時候，咁到底嗰個嘅 breakout 嘅情況會係點樣啦？邊啲地方係我哋要及早去準備啦？咁樣咁其實都會見到嚟緊咧，越嚟越多咧係一啲即係我哋本身樂齡科技嘅產品咧，其實佢都會應用咗 AI 入面咧去分析佢個數據啊，同埋俾一啲嘅及早嘅通知大家嘅。咁我相信嚟緊咧，呢個亦都係一個發展嘅大趨勢嘅。咁今日時間關係，我大概就分享到咁多先。Thank you。